1 Corinthians chapter 15, beginning in verse 35, and I'm reading from the New Revised Standard Version. But someone will ask, how are the dead raised? With what kind of body do they come? Fool. What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And as for what you sow, you do not sow the body that is to be, but a bare seed, perhaps of wheat or of some other grain. But God gives it a body as he has chosen, and to each kind of seed its own body. Not all flesh is alike, but there is one flesh for human beings, another for animals, another for birds, and another for fish. There are both heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of the heavenly is one thing, and that of the earthly is another. There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars. Indeed, star differs from star in glory. So it is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable. What is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a physical body. It is raised a spiritual body. If there is a physical body, there is also a spiritual body. Thus it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. But it is not the spiritual that is first, but the physical, and then the spiritual. The first man was from the earth, a man of dust. The second man is from the heavens. As was the man of dust, so are those who are of the dust. And as is the man of the heavens, so are those who are of the heavens. Just as we have borne the image of the man of dust, we will also bear the image of the man of the heavens. I have to bring us back a little bit to Hebrew and to Greek, because that's the original language here, and Paul is dealing with some really complicated stuff. We keep going back to Genesis, and we keep going back to the word in Hebrew, nephesh. Nephesh is the word translated in the Old Testament as soul, or life, or self. Nephesh. The current existence of humanity, you here sitting today, are a combination of the raw material of the universe and the breath of God. And together they form you. You are a nephesh, the raw material of the universe, dust, and the breath of God. That's who you are. But that is not what you are destined to become. There's only one component part of who we are that differs in the resurrected body. In the resurrected body, our bodies are not made from dust. As we investigate Paul's understanding of the resurrection body, we're going to discover three insights into the future promised to us in the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. We're going to look at the diversity of bodies, the division of the heavens and the earth, and the direction of creation. We're going to begin with the diversity of bodies. Look at verse 35. But someone will ask, how are the dead, which in Greek is the word nekros, which is corpse. But someone will ask, how are corpses raised? With what kind of body, soma, do they come? Fool, Paul says. What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And as for what you sow, you don't sow the body that is to be, but a bare seed, perhaps of wheat or of some other grain. But God gives it a body as he has chosen, and to each kind of seed its own body. Not all flesh is alike, but there is one flesh for human beings, another for animals, another for birds, and another for fish. There are both heavenly bodies, we're probably here talking about the sun, moon, and stars, and earthly bodies, the stuff on the earth. But the glory of the heavenly is one thing, and that of the earthly is another. There's one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars. Indeed, star differs from star in glory. So it is with the resurrection of corpses. So Paul's comparison in these verses is an interesting one. So for Paul, he compares our present bodies to seeds. He says that right now you're more like acorns than like oak trees. So you and I right now are in some sort of seed form. The Bible loves this image. It talks about the earth as a womb. It talks about the coming of Jesus as birth. It talks about us as seeds that need to be buried in order to become what we're meant to be. Everything about the scriptures is that this word is a transitional place, a place in which humanity is conceived, but not a place in which we were ever intended to remain. And so that's over and over again, this is Paul's idea. Paul also makes, though, an additional observation. Essentially, he argues that from the same raw material, countless numbers of bodies can be made. From the same raw material come many different bodies. Now, we know the truth of this claim. Now, Paul might have been thinking about the four essences in Greek philosophy: earth, air, water, and fire. He might have been thinking about that. He might have been extrapolating from the creation narrative in Genesis that everything came from nothing, and so everything comes from the same nothingness, and God has to create that way. Whatever he's saying, we know the truth of this claim that he's making in much greater detail. We know what the ancients could never have known, that everything in this room, from you to the chair, to the book, to your hair, to the lights, are made up of the same fundamental particles, just arranged in different orders. We're all quarks and electrons and protons and neutrons, just arranged in different ways. That's essentially what Paul is saying. God took the raw material of the universe to make you. You are just like everything else in that way, except he breathes into you the breath of life. There is a part of us that participates in the entirety of the universe, because from the same raw material that makes you and me, all of creation has been made. For Paul, if that's true of the material bodies you're in now, it will also be true of the spiritual body in the resurrection. Let's keep going. We'll see where Paul heads. Let's look at the division of the heavens and the earth. Look at verses 42 to 45. So it is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable. What is raised is imperishable. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a physical body. So the Greek there is pasuke soma. So it's translating a Hebrew concept because Paul is Jewish. This is nephesh. Verse 44, it is sown a nephesh. It is raised a spiritual body. If there is a nephesh body, there is also a spirit body. Thus it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living nephesh. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. We seem to be returning to this again and again in this part of 1 Corinthians. But remember that humanity in our present form is composed of dust, the raw material of the universe, and spirit. And together those things become a nephesh. So spirit for the Hebrew people is life itself. It's the animating force of God. When God breathes spirit into dust, it gets up and walks around. When God breathes spirit into nothingness, and he breathes it by talking it. And so God speaks into the nothingness and galaxies are formed. He speaks into the dirt and you are made. He speaks and things are transformed. This is what God does. So we are partially that because the Spirit is what's giving us life, but we are also this universe because we're made up of dust. And what was dust, you and I become nepheshes when God's breath enters it. And that's how Paul wants you to understand. This is who Adam was. Adam is the raw material of the universe. The breath of God breathed into it, and he became a nephesh. That's who Adam was. And because we are all made in his image, because we came from him, we all share the same basic makeup. And this is how Jesus was incarnated among us in the womb of Mary, as a nephesh. Raw material of the universe, breath of God. Except you and I received the breath of God. This was God himself. The resurrected body, though, is made up differently. The source material of that body is not the raw material of this universe, quarks and electrons and protons and neutrons and the rest. The raw material of that body is spirit itself. And some of you are thinking, now, why did you make such a big deal a few weeks ago about the body part? Now you're saying we're ghosts? No. That's why we spent all that time on bodies. It is a body made out of spirit. And this is so important. And you go, well, what is that like? Well, we have a wonderful story. We have a picture of what the resurrected body will look like. It's the body of Jesus resurrected from the dead. Here's a story from the Gospel according to Luke. Chapter 24, verses 36 to 43. This is Jesus after he rose from the dead. This is the experience of the disciples with him. While they were talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." Now they're in a locked room, and he just appears in the middle of it. That's why they're terrified here. Verse 37, they were startled and terrified and thought that they were seeing a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you frightened? Why do doubts arise in your hearts? Look at my hands and my feet. See that it is I myself. Touch me and see, for a ghost does not have flesh and bones as you see that I have." And when he had said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. While in their joy they were disbelieving and still wondering, he said to them, "Have you anything here to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it in their presence. He's not a ghost. Right? But they thought he was. They figured that this was he just appeared in a room that was locked. He must be a spirit now. But no, he has a body. It's clear that in his resurrected form, Jesus had a body, but a body unlike the one you and I have, sourced someplace else, and so different, and yet in form the same. He even ate in their presence, in his resurrected body. What Paul is telling us is that Jesus' body was composed of spirit. And spirit for the Hebrew people is life itself. The second Adam, Jesus, the final Adam, after which all who put their faith in him will be made. He has become what was once raw material that life was imparted into, now becomes life itself that can impart life. Do you see the difference? The calculation has changed. The resurrection body is not dust with the breath of God in it. The resurrection body is spirit with the breath of God in it. It is a body sourced in God himself. No intermediary material necessary. For Paul, in the resurrection, the dichotomy of the material and the spiritual will be obliterated. The division of the heavens and the earth within each of us will be removed. We have been dust with life breathed into it. That's what we are now. But those who place their faith in Jesus are destined to become what Jesus is. Beings made in God's image. Beings with bodies sourced not in the created universe, but in the Spirit himself. Look at verses 46 to 49. But it is not the spiritual that's first, but the physical, the nephesh, and then the spirit body. The first man was from the earth, a man of dust. The second man is from the heavens, from where God is. As was the man of dust, so are those who are of the dust. And as is the man of the heavens, so are those who are of the heavens. Just as we have borne the image of the man of dust, we will also bear the image of the man of the heavens. For Paul, we must understand what we are becoming if we are to live today out of and into our future in Jesus. Humanity was not created as we presently are to stay this way forever. Like acorns produced by an oak tree, the acorn contains within it, right, the roadmap to what it will become. In some ways, the oak tree is within the acorn. But the acorn is not the oak tree. The same is true of you. The scriptures tell us that eternity is in the heart of man. The blueprint of what you will be is in there, but it's not your form right now. That's what Paul is trying to say. Like acorns produced by an oak tree, the spirit within us will be created into a body that has the form of our bodies, but does not resemble its reality. Humans begin as dust, as nothing. We become nepheshes, and we are intended to become life-giving spiritual beings. That's Paul's argument. Jesus shows us this road, and he shows us the road we must follow as we follow Jesus. Now, of course, at present, we are a combination of matter and spirit. But we are destined to become beings with bodies sourced entirely in spirit. This is our future. And for Paul, this knowledge, this promise, this hope can transform the way we live today. For Paul, these bodies must die if we're to become what we were created to be. And the kernel of what we will be is within you. It's the Spirit in you will be what your body is made from in the new heavens and the new earth. This flesh is not your future, though your future is a body. It can transform how we live, to know that it's okay to not like what we are, because this is not how we will stay. It's okay to hate being an acorn, but you're not destined to be an acorn. This is the gospel of Jesus. And it's good news to those who know something is wrong. It can transform the way you suffer. Because what Paul says is that these bodies must, as an acorn must, turn from green to brown and fall off the tree and bury itself in the ground, maybe get nibbled on by a few squirrels, if it's going to grow. So you too have to decay. This body has to die. It has to decay. You have to experience the corruption of it. You have to be filled with a longing to be free of it. Your death is simply the burying of a seed that will grow into something you cannot imagine. You must trust it to God's timing. But as you suffer, you recognize that this is part of my transition. And I don't know why some suffer more than others. You can take that up with God. But all suffer eventually. It can transform your rejoicing. In this world, we really worship the flesh. We really worship the chemicals produced by our bodies. We really worship the dopamine that's released when we feel euphoria. We really worship the nerves when they're stimulated and we feel tingles on our spine. We really worship that stuff in this world. It's really most of our gods. But when we know that these bodies are not our future, then we know that these chemicals and these sensations are not going to be the thing that's going to determine our future. And we need to be able to deny them. That's Jesus' story for us. In order to do what is right, because we're learning how to be bodies, but we're not learning how to be in these bodies forever. So even our pleasure is transformed by the knowledge that this too solid flesh will melt and dissolve into a dew, to quote Shakespeare. This is the gospel of Jesus.